Welcome to The Fix. Sit down with copywriting experts Nick O'Connor and Glenn Fisher as they review, discuss, and improve real-world copy sent in by you. This is The Fix.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Fix. So today we're going to talk about 4 specific things you can do to make the first page of your sales promotion a lot stronger. So you've probably heard in the past that you need to spend about 80% of your time writing on that first 1 to 2 pages, because that's really where you're going to grab people's attention and then hook them into reading the rest of your sales pitch, whether it's 4 pages long or 400 pages long. All of the real hard work and heavy lifting needs to be done at the start. Now, there's lots of different ways of strengthening your copy at the beginning and making that first page really, really compelling. Today, we're going to talk about 4 things we think would be useful to everybody. Now, these are techniques or ways of thinking about the copy that we've learned over the last 10 plus years as copywriters. So hopefully you get the benefit of a lot of experience and a lot of wrong steps and failures that we've had in our careers, writing copy that hasn't worked. The idea being that you're able to make your copy stronger without having to go through all of that pain and anguish, much as it was fun at the time, I suppose. Well, Glenn, let's bring the copy up on screen, because we're going to talk about the 4 things that we recommend you do to your first page through the lens of a piece of copy that's been sent in by a Fix reader. So I'm going to read it out first, and then we'll look at how it could have changed and what you can do. So it begins. If you're a parent of a 7 to 17-year-old, learn how I was able to help my 8-year-old become more confident and social through the learn and earn technique. I don't want to go outside. My kid quietly went inside her room after saying this to me. She'd rather play Candy Crush or watch a cartoon on the TV. Became a boring routine. Get up at 6 a.m., school timing 7 a.m. to 2 p.m., lunch 3 p.m. And then she would get lost in the digital world. There are only 2 escape routes, a smartphone or the TV. I was worried about her. She said playing outside is boring. She didn't like speaking to her classmates. She didn't participate in any extracurricular activities. I didn't understand what the problem was. She was learning English in school, but she wasn't socializing. She was learning how to paint in school, but she didn't enjoy it. She was getting A grades, but she wasn't applying any knowledge. So what was this thing that was stopping her? Okay, we're going to stop there. We were sent a longer piece of copy, but we're just focusing on that first page. So we're going to talk about 4 things, a sort of 4-step cheat sheet for analyzing and editing your own copy. And the first thing that I would recommend you do is actually a little bit counterintuitive, because it doesn't involve changing any of the copy at all. The first thing is just to ask yourself, what lead type am I using in this piece of copy? So in this example, it's clearly a problem solution, right? It's a pretty strong piece of copy. It's targeted at parents who are worried about their children. So that's a very emotional problem. Something that all parents are probably worried about in one way or another over the years. It's something that people can empathize with. So there's real emotion, real feeling there. So this is a problem solution pitch. Now, it could have been a big promise, or it could have been an offer, or it could have been a story. There's lots of different ways you can do it. The reason, Glenn, that I would recommend you start by just asking yourself what lead type you're using is because it forces you to stop being a writer for a second and start to become an editor or shift into a more analytical way of thinking, which I think is really important when you're editing your own copy, because you need to be analytical and say, what have I done and why did I do it like that, before you can go any further, really.
Massively so. I mean, it's interesting to me. As we say, this is from years and years of experience that we've been working on this, and now like so we still write a lot of copy, but obviously we're trying to advise and help people how to write copy, and so we're thinking it from an analytical point of view ourselves. And I've been thinking about my process and how I'm able to do that. And I think one of the key things that I've been able to become more successful as a copywriter is I have trained myself, and it is an active thing you have to do as a copywriter, is to train yourself to be analytical about your own copy. The more analytical you can be, the further away you can get from your own copy and then look at it with fresh eyes, the better you will become as a copywriter generally. That's not to say you shouldn't still go and get it reviewed and looked at by other people, but the further you can get away and look at it with fresh and just go, what is that doing? Why is that doing? Why there are so many ideas here, that sentence doesn't flow when I speak it, that ideas contradictory to that. I've answered that question. And all these things that you can do without just getting taken away by your own copy is very important for a headline. And I say headline, that we're looking at the first page, but it's universal. But for anything, that initial thing, to understand what you are trying to do in the framework of what type of lead is it? Is it a problem solution? Is it a promise? Is it a proclamation? Is it an offer? Understanding that and figuring that out so that you definitely know, and you can literally write it down and have it there, means A, you can zoom in on that and make sure you're doing what you should be doing. You are doing a problem and a solution. And it also, bonus round, gives you a load of other angles that you can later take. If you get lost in this and it don't feel right, you can go, actually, well, I'll take all of that detail out and I'll make it a promise, I'll make it an offer, and I'll do that. So it really does help you in the long run as well. So I think it's a very important step to take.
And it forces you to think, well, what was I trying to do? And for instance, you might say it's a problem solution mixed with a big promise. There might be a little blend. But if your answer is, oh, I don't actually know, then probably you didn't. That's fine, but okay, little alarm bell goes off and say, okay, why don't I know what it is I'm trying to accomplish here? Why don't I know what sort of lead type I'm using? Maybe I haven't thought about that yet. So that just allows you to go back a step sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, I'd say the copy is clearly a problem solution. So I'd say move on to the next step, but ask yourself that question, get yourself in the analytical framework right off the bat. The next thing I would do is look at the piece of copy and make sure that the benefit is stated clearly and early and emphatically as you can. Now, I've made some edits to this copy to show you what I mean. Now, these edits aren't perfect. I've not spent weeks editing this piece of copy. I'm trying to sort of illustrate my point by showing you what I would do. So if you remember, the original headline said, if you're a parent of a 7 to 17-year-old, and it says, learn how I was able to help my 8-year-old become more confident and social through the learn and earn technique. So we want to state that that's the benefit, okay? We want to state it more clearly than that. So I'll just bring it up on the screen now. You can see the copy in red is what I've changed. So I suggested that we push the sort of story that was in the headline to begin with to the eyebrow. I don't know if this is a mum or a dad, so I've just called it mum, but so it would now say something like, frustrated mom reveals how she helped her 8-year-old stop playing Candy Crush, watching cartoons and being antisocial. So that's in the eyebrow, so it's kept, but then the benefit is stated more plainly in the headline. How the learn and earn technique is proven to make children more confident, social and happier. Now that could be strengthened, absolutely, but it's stated more plainly and more obviously up front. And I think that's really important. You may choose at a later date to unwind that as the copy develops, but to begin with, just try and make it a really clear and simple benefit. I just added a little bit of deck copy in there. We already had this idea, if you're a parent of a 7 to 17-year-old, that was all we had. I just tried to add a bit more emotion into that to deepen that benefit. Okay, so we've already said that it's going to maybe make them more confident, social and happier. So I've added in the deck, if you're worried about their behavior, then help is at hand. So worry, anxiety, whatever, I just tried to heighten the emotion because there's an interplay between that and the benefit. That's not to say that the headline we had to begin with was wrong, but in that first page, we didn't have the benefit stated clearly and directed at the reader. So I would make sure you do that, especially if your lead is a story about somebody else. Make sure your headline just gets that benefit in. Don't make the reader wait 2 or 3 pages to hear what's in it for me. If you want to tell them a story about somebody else, that's absolutely fine, but make sure they know that there's something in it for them before you begin that story, or really, really early doors. So step 2 would be state the benefit clearly and early. Glenn, I'll throw over to you for step 3, which is to flip those I's into U's. Now, this is something we talk about all the time, and people do struggle with it, and they needn't, because it's actually really, really easy to do.
It is, yeah. I remember the first time I would do it, and I'll share this with you as a viewer, because it's very easy once you're a successful copywriter to be like, oh, well, we know all the answers. But I remember getting an absolute drubbing down once. And is drubbing down the right phrase?
Almost certainly not. But go with it, mate. It's fine.
We'll drub down. Let's drub down. I have to find out what that means after. But I remember it very clearly. It was the managing editor of a magazine that we were working with, and we were in a peer review group, and it was one of the first pieces of copy I wrote, sales letter like this, headline lead. And I, to be fair to myself, didn't really know what I was doing. So, but I went in there, and for some reason he must have not liked me, and he just laid into me saying, I this, I this, I this, I this, I this. And he literally just went through all my copy and just went, I this, I. He goes, I do not give a crap about you, kind of thing. I do not want to hear about I and your experience. And I was like, whoa, like it was kind of unnecessarily harsh kind of thing. But it stuck with me, and that had an effect.
Yeah. And here you are now, probably 13, 14 years later, retelling that story. So I would argue it's a good piece of advice, maybe poorly given.
It was poorly given, yeah. Perhaps not as harshly as it needed to be, but thank you in hindsight. Because I immediately learned that lesson, and I went back and basically just kind of changed all the I's to U's in the first instance. I have a simultaneous change when I was studying creative writing, where my tutor, contradictory to that, said, oh, you can't just change the tense, like if you're changing from you to he, or the third person to the first person, second person, all this stuff. And you can't if you're writing a novel, and you can't think. But if you're writing copy, the first thing to do is to change any I to you, literally go through and actually change the word. Then what you'll see is that the sentence slightly changes a bit, and you have to change it. But you can very quickly kind of give the clue, literally search for the word I, see where you've done it. Sometimes there'll be occasions to refer to yourself, but 9 times out of 10, you can just change it to you. And then what you will look to do is, you'll often be forced to do this, but just be aware of it as well, is that you then want to make that sentence as active as possible. So it's you are doing this. A lot of this, some of the copy here is like when you say, I did this thing, it's all in the past. And it's when you turn it, flip it to the reader and say you, and you making them the lead character, you'll naturally make it more active, so it feels like they're in it, rather than say you did this. It's like, you know, that feeling when you do this, and make it all as active as possible. I'll give you a little weird tip, but book by a guy called Jay McKinney, called Bright Lights Big City. Really short little book, dead easy to read, and quite, it's like a bit 80s kind of fashion and all that kind of stuff, but it's written in the second person, and it's written in you all the way through it. Go away and have a read of that. And I read that at the same time that I was kind of learning copy, and it's just always stuck in my mind of this duality. So it's just a good way to see it and think about how that makes you feel. You feel engaged. It's a weird thing that happens. So always turn as many eyes as possible into use.
Glenn, in our much anticipated but still never delivered episode we're planning on first lines of novels and sales letters, I think we'll find many of them, even if they're stories about other people, will have an element of the word you in there.
Definitely.
The key thing that I would point out in the edits that we've made here is that first line in red that you should be able to see on your screen now. So I actually left the opening, the I's in the opening, because I thought, okay, fine, you know, let's leave them in for now. Although I agree with you, I think you should just take them all out to begin with, or they might not work. But say within, you know, if you're telling a story about somebody else, within, how many lines is it there? 7 lines, something like that, 7 or 8 lines. You want to then switch to the you tense if you can. And the way to do that in a problem solution is really, really easy. Is to use a line like, if you're a parent, you've probably been there too. And then you just start saying all the same things, all the things that was, my daughter was on her phone playing Candy Crush. She was antisocial. She was doing this. She was missing out. all of that content stays exactly the same, but you just change the point of view. You've probably been there too, watching your kid playing on their phone instead of talking to their family, not wanting to go outside on a beautiful sunny day. It must kill you, because it does me. So it's really, really, really easy to do. Just use those little linking lines.
It also connects with, it helps you as the copywriter connect with the person you're writing to, which seems like such a prosaic piece of advice, but it is so important. So we so often write to other copywriters, we write to ourselves, we write to the client, the work. You ultimately have to write to the reader. By saying you, it really does have a physical, mental effect that you're addressing that specific reader. And then when you realize that you're being hyperbolic or you're not really speaking to the reader, when it becomes absurd when you're saying you. So you realize that it's an absurdity what you're saying. So by speaking in that second person, it really does help you in a number of ways.
You may go from I to you back to I again. I see that a lot too. If it's a real personal story, a sort of testimonial, or a founder's story, an origin story. I did this, let's say I'll use an example from the financial markets. I was worried about my retirement, and I set out to find the answer. You've probably thought the same thing yourself. If only there was a way that you could make more money with less stress and not have to worry about the volatility in the market. Well, I asked myself the same question, and here's what I found. So you can go from I to you back to I again, but that transition into you is really important, because it just brings the reader close. It makes them part of your story. You don't want to just say I. You wait for your turn. I. Bring them in. So reverse those I statements out into you. It will probably, going back to point one, help heighten, in this example, which is a problem solution. We've stated the solution more plainly up top. We've now made the problem, we've agitated around the problem by making it more of the reader's problem, making it something that they are drawn into, that they can have something to feel about, which definitely deepens that benefit as well. So you can see again why we needed to establish what our lead type was, because that's tied into the kind of advice. So we've now made changes to the headline. We've made some changes to the body copy. We've not changed the direction of the copy at all. We've not changed the idea, which is strong and sound, but we're trying to shape the copy and work with the copy. So those are the three first things we would do. Now, step 4, I would say, is what this copy needs, and what copy often needs, is more of an open loop. And by that, I just mean something that is compelling and slightly mysterious and brings in an element of curiosity that the reader might think, oh, I wonder what that is. Now, I've highlighted, you should be able to see on your screen now, that the phrase learn and earn technique. So this is actually a really interesting product. I obviously read the whole piece of copy, and it's all about how starting a business with your child can be a great way to bring them out of themselves, and helping them form stronger relationships with you and with the world. I thought that was really interesting. I wondered whether learn and earn technique either telegraphed that too much or slightly was a little bit too on the nose. And what I mean by that is you need to try and brainstorm ways in which you make that device, that thing, that secret, that product feel different and fresh and unusual. Learn and earn technique to me doesn't really open a loop. I can sort of guess what it means. An open loop would be half of an idea that makes me think I need to know what the other part of that was. So for instance, it's usually a detail or a story or something, some specific sense of an idea that just suggests that there's more to come. So for instance, if it was about entrepreneurialism, could it be about Richard Branson or Steve Jobs, or find out this connection between, I actually started Googling, child entrepreneurs. Did very famous people start businesses when they were young or whatever? I'm not going to do that work right now, but that's the type of thing that I'd be looking for, that detail or something I can bring in later that can be a bit more suggestive up there. How a secret from Richard Branson's childhood is the secret to whatever. That's not quite right, but you know what I mean? It starts to open a loop slightly, doesn't it?
It does, and I it's slightly different, but it's in the same tone. But just be aware, like learn and earn. It's almost too what you're suggesting by opening a loop and adding curiosity is to make it not so literal.
Yes.
Learn and earn is a little bit too literal, and also just the word earn, that sounds like work. It's already at the headline stage making me think, oh, learn and earn. I've got to learn and earn. Oh, I've got to earn it. I've got to do work on this.
So that's the opposite of an open loop, actually, isn't it, Glenn? That's you've categorized that down into something which may well be wrong, but you as a reader have categorized that and rejected it. We want to open a loop so we cannot categorize.
Curiosity. We want to know, do I have to work? Is it easy? Is it hard? Is it what's going on? So when you say something as quick as like the connection between Richard Branson and Steve Jobs and what have you is proven to do this thing. Now you're leaning, you're going, okay, well, I need to find out a little bit more. Whereas anything where you're closing questions and you're going, right, well, I need to earn. I'm gonna have to do something. Learning, that's doing something. I'm gonna have to. Those words have connotations that I already have loads of baggage with. Whereas an open loop where you're creating some curiosity, you're still playing on the fact that those phrases. So Richard Branson, but my thoughts about Richard Branson are, okay, well, I know he's rich and thingy, so yeah, that sounds kind of interesting. So it's all just be aware of, what baggage comes with things.
You could go in a completely different direction. So I think the copy talks about, say, a lemonade stand, sort of the ultimate. So I don't know, where do you set up a lemonade stand? Right in front of your house. You could take a picture of the pavement in front of or the sidewalk, I suppose, if we're talking to a more international audience. You take a picture of the ground outside your house or the curbside or whatever, and you put that in, how this patch of ground could hold the key to making your child more confident, social, and happier. That doesn't quite work, but it's getting in that direction, isn't it? And then later on, it's like, well, what's that patch of ground outside your house got to do with things?
Yeah, I guess what you're doing as well is getting more and more specific. Learn and earn is a very unspecific thing. It's kind of vague. It's like, but if you drill down, if you go onto that lemonade stand and you go, right, okay, well, I'm selling a glass of I'll say glass, I don't know why you sell a glass, but you're selling like a cup of lemonade for 20p, and that's actually like, that is proved by doing that, you're proven to make your children more healthy, happy, and all this kind of stuff. Now you've got a really specific thing, like how this like 20p glass of lemonade is proven to help your child become, and you go, oh right,
that's very good.
So it's all about the specificity. We'll look at 4Us and all that kind of stuff, but you can see how you're looking for curiosity, but curiosity, and this is a key thing that a lot of people make a mistake of, does not mean being more vague. You are, if anything, you want to be more specific. That's what makes things curious. What is that particular specific thing has made me go, oh, I'm interested in that. So
I'll tell you why that's interesting, Glenn, because that also, as well as opening a loop, confounds the expectation of the reader, because for instance, I think perhaps you've stumbled onto it because you don't have kids. You're not necessarily as dialed into the whole like sugary drinks are bad for children thing, but the idea that a sugary drink is the secret, now that's obviously not what you're saying, because they're not going to drink it, they're going to sell it. But how this 20-cent sugary glass of lemonade, that sounds odd, doesn't it? But already it starts to feel a bit more unique, and it confounds the expectations. It makes the reader think, how can that be true? They may even read on just to check that you're not suggesting that sugar is the answer.
Yeah,
it's sugary, it's bad for their teeth, and it's whatever. But I found it was actually the secret to bring. All of a sudden you start to think, how is that? That's a loop, isn't it? That is an open loop, because you want to read on to find out how that can possibly be the case. Anyway, we won't over egg that, because there's many different ways you could go, but I just always make sure in step 4 that you're thinking, what is the open loop? Generally speaking, with a problem solution pitch like this, your problem is going to be really clearly defined and emotional, and your solution or your benefit is going to be quite simply laid out in opposition to the problem. So the loop tends to be the device, the way in which you choose to talk about your product. Now here we've got learn and earn. We could have just put the product in. We could have just said how my new book is proven. those aren't loops. Those collapse the different possibilities down to something that we can classify. So generally in a problem solution pitch, we're going to want to try and do something interesting. It's a routine. It's the patch of ground outside your home. It's the 15 minutes after school. It's the whatever, where, perhaps that's when you do the lemonade stand or the business, whatever. It's generally speaking, you're going to try and do something clever with that device to make me think, I've got that problem and I want that solution, but what is this thing that they're talking about? I'll read on and find out what that is. That's how that pitch all comes together. So those are four things you can do. Just run through them again. What lead type are you using? Get into the analytical framework of thinking. Step 2, state the benefit really, really clearly and early. Do not make your reader wait to hear what is in it for them. If you don't say it within the first page, you haven't said it. Step 3, turn the eyes into yous where possible. Really easy with a sentence like you've probably been there too, or we've all felt like that. Or if you're anything like me, you've got exactly the same problem. Just bring the reader in. And step 4, open a loop. Give the reader some compelling reason, some curiosity factor that means they have to read on. Glenn, there is a bonus 5th thing everybody can do, which of course is to get their copy reviewed. Nothing will make your copy stronger than getting constructive, honest feedback from other writers. Of course, that's what we do here at The Fix. And perhaps in a crazy move for our careers, we do this free of charge on the internet every single week.
We're just silly men.
Silly men. But if you do want to send your copy in for review, the email address should be on screen right now. It's feedback@thefixcopywriting.com. Send us your copy. It could be a headline and a lead like that. It could be a challenge. It could be a Facebook ad, a subject line. It could be anything. We'll take a look at it. We'll show you how you can make it stronger. And beyond any technique, any cheat sheet, anything else you can do to try and make your work stronger, sending your copy to somebody else, could be us, could be somebody else you trust, that will always help you make that piece of copy stronger, because you'll get an honest response that will help you figure out where it's strong and where it's not strong. And Glenn, really, that's the real secret to becoming a great copywriter.
Without doubt. Ultimately, we write copy to persuade people to do things, and the emphasis on people. But if you just go blind into the world and show your copy to people, you don't know what the hell's coming. Like, you've got no idea. So you want to show it to some people before you send it out into the world. And ideally, you want to send it to people who have got the right balance between understanding what you're trying to do, but haven't got as much skin in the game. People who've got baggage, who might be in your office, like a client or whatever, they're going to be bringing their own ideas to it. You need that element of review is important. But I think the advantage of sending it to someone like me and Nick, we know what we're looking for, but we've got no politics around the piece of copy or whatever. We're just going to look at it as a pure emotional reaction, like an audience member would, like a customer would, and give you honest feedback. And that will improve your copy no end. Don't be worried and scared. We're all always nice. And but yeah, the quicker you learn to be able to throw your idea out there to get it made stronger, that's all you're ever doing. You're always just looking to make the copy stronger. The fact that you've already written it is pretty good. That's like, most people won't get that far. So you've done that bit. Now get it to other copywriters and they'll make it stronger. We do it with our own copy. I don't think I've ever written a piece of copy where someone hasn't looked at it first before it's gone out.
So those 4 things hopefully will help you edit your own copy and strengthen your own work. Once you've been through them, or once you've tried to go through that process that we've just outlined, send us your copy. It's free. The email address you need is feedback@thefixcopywriting.com. Glenn, let's wrap up for this week there. Send us your copy in, and it could be your copy that we're looking at next week or some future date. So get in touch, send us your copy. We'd love to read it. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
That's all for this episode, but if you'd like to get your copy reviewed, or you've seen some copy you want Nick and Glenn's opinion on, get in touch at feedback@thefixcopywriting.com. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and share.